Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations.
social selling maybe.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody listening to us either live or on the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And today I've got a very special guest. Dev Pasu is joining us from Toronto today. He is the CEO of Powered by Search. Dev, welcome to the show today.
Laura, thanks so much for having me. Excited to jam.
Thank you so much. You have very exciting topics to discuss today, so I can't wait to dig all into growth and demos and everything that you have to speak about. But to start with, can you share a bit about yourself and what Powered by Search does?
Sure. So I'm entering year 20 as a technology marketer. I started off in 2000, what is it, at Microsoft. And ever since then, I've fallen in love with the way that people buy things on the internet. That largely led into working with a lot of different software companies over the last 15 plus years that we've been running Powered by Search. And here, what we do is we really drive predictable growth for B2B SaaS brands, companies that most of you have either experienced their products or used their products. Sentinel One, Elastic, Varonis, FreshBooks, Toggle, Basecamp, for example, they all rely on us essentially to be able to hit their pipeline targets. So most of the time, the CMOs and VPs of marketing at those companies come to us and say, "We're here and not really hitting our target. Don't really know why. We need to be able to hit our targets. We're doing all the things, but it feels a little bit like random acts of marketing." So we take that, the confusion, and turn it into clarity. Really, in the way that we do it is the system we use called the predictable growth methodology. And so that's something we've been sort of finessing over the last decade plus, and it's the playbook we use today.
Nice. And usually, when you start working with the companies, so do you apply that playbook, and how does it work out when you start your engagement with clients?
Yeah, great question. So, where we start off with is always looking at where there's revenue leaks in their entire pipeline, from the first click or the first impression all the way down to close one. And as we start breaking down and chunking this, we notice that there's revenue leaks at every kind of juncture specifically. So, many of the problems that pop up are, let's say you're serving an ad, but no one's clicking it, or you have an organic search result and no one clicking it. Well, the problem there is invisibility, right? And so that needs to be solved for. Maybe you get the click, but then people bounce off your page. So there's a stickiness problem. Maybe they get to a specific call to action page, a demo or a trial, but they don't sign up. And so you kind of take this to the nth degree all the way up to closed one, essentially. What we notice as we go down the funnel from marketing into markups and to revenue operations is that you have opportunities that are budget authority need and timing qualified, but unfortunately will fall off for whatever reason. And the human condition in sales is to always chase after existing warm or hot pipeline, not after cooling or cold pipeline. And so we use marketing as a co-pilot over there to revive dead leads and dead deals essentially as well. And so the entire sort of funnel is from click all the way to close one.
Mhm.
And really what we're doing is identifying where the drop-offs are and being able to say, well, what would basically fixing the gap of that drop off look like? And sometimes it's the smallest things. It's the small hinges that swing the large doors that make all the difference. And this is sort of the challenge that a lot of CMOs and VPs have, where they can't boil the ocean anymore, right? They can't go ahead and say the typical sort of playbook of, I'm a new CMO in seat. Let's go ahead and redesign our website. Ding, 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 if you've heard that before. Let's pull in a new ABM platform, which will take 6 months to deploy. Then let's go ahead and redo our positioning and that type of thing. Let's do all the messaging on the site. Let's hire a couple of new agencies and figure out how to make them work together. That playbook just does not work anymore, especially with the pipeline pressure we're seeing our clients basically facing across the board. And so where we come in is this sort of knowing what to do strategically, but being able to tactically execute it in a way that is both simple, it's actionable, very goal oriented, and easy to understand and measure, basically. We can definitely double click on that as we dive into this conversation.
So it sounds more like it's an operational problem than the marketing problem to solve, really, because the marketers usually would jump into the marketer problem, what I know, what I see, what looks wrong. But this sounds more like an operational problem to solve most of the times that you experience. Is that correct?
It's operationalizing marketing. So it's the intersection of those two things, right? So the reality is we are not our own buyers. And so we think about the jobs to be done sometimes as launch the landing page, ship the ad, get the creative, build the ebook. But largely the mental construct is as soon as you do that, if you're not going back and reading your own blog posts, why would you expect your customers to? When no one ever stops to ask that question, I think that fundamental challenge over here is that we are all involved in this curse of more, doing more, sometimes doing more with less, which is the topic that we'll kind of dive into today, of course. But then because there's this pressure of more, 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 there's actually very little patience to sit back and look at, did it work? The thing shipped yesterday, that to-do list that we checked off, a week later, a month later, a quarter later, is it performing basically as expected? And so this is why we see, for example, in content or ads or marketing, ops campaigns, for example, generally we find that a lot of incoming clients who work with us they're doing a lot of stuff. Their hair is on fire, by the way, but they just don't know which 10 to 20% of it's producing 80 to 90% of the returns. And so the value prop really is, what if you could do 10 times more with a tenth of the work? If you only stopped and looked at where things are breaking down. And so and that kind of aligns with what boards want. It's what finance teams want. It's what the C level basically wants, essentially, as well. I think the thing is that when you're doing so much, it's very easy to feel confused and just all over the place. But the minute you have clarity on exactly what to do and what order to do it in, the actual fix becomes pretty straightforward. Maybe not easy, but it is definitely straightforward. And once you have that clarity, you can execute pretty quickly.
Fun. Let's dig into all of those details. So tell me more about the 3 times 10 framework to start with.
Yeah, so let's start off with the problem first off about what this 3 by 10 method basically is about. So we frequently were asked by VPs and CMOs saying, I can't wait around a year for XYZ channel to work. And they've heard it all, right? SEO takes a year to work, you know, B2B ads takes 2 quarters to build pipeline, for example. And the issue is they need something that's going to give them a result today so that they can hit numbers by the end of this quarter and build sustainability for the next, 4 quarters ahead. And the challenge with most marketers in general, whether in-house, agency side, independent consultant, is they're often thinking about the deliverable that they can control rather than the impact across the entire board. And so often we're just talking our own books. If you're a web design company, you're going to say you need to redo your website. If you're an ads agency, you're going to say you need better ads. And so we're unable to kind of zoom out and say what's just pragmatic thing to do for the business, what's in their best interest essentially. So the 3 by 10 method basically came from two things. And so essentially it's three different levers that you can control that produce a 10% improvement in those particular levers. And so the question is three too much? Because it's not 50 things. And so is it unreasonable that you could do three things over, call it a 12-week period, right? Something that's addressable over the next quarter, essentially, no matter where you are in the quarter today. So three things. Is that unreasonable? And most people say, no, it's not unreasonable. I could probably focus on three things and not, become distracted. And 10% improvements. Is that unreasonable? Like we're not swinging for 50, 100, 2x, The challenge I think in marketing today is these big sort of numbers where it's like, we will 10x your pipeline. No, that's actually not true. And this is sort of the problem with the lack of trust in the industry today. It doesn't matter if you're a software platform, a services provider, if you're even frankly, a directory, right? Like where you're aggregating all the different products, even if you're an analyst firm, trust is at an all-time low. The reason trust is at an all-time low is because promises have been up here and execution's been down here. So the question is, are 10% improvements unreasonable? Largely, we see no matter if we ask people who are super analytical, if we ask people who are ambitious or optimistic, they say 10% is actually nothing to sneeze at. We can probably do 10%, right? If we put our heads together. And so the 3 by 10 method is essentially this. There are only three ways to grow any business. The first is the cult of more. You get more sales, period. And upstream of more sales, if you're a marketer, is more pipeline. More pipeline usually means more demos or more trials, at least in the B2B SaaS world. So we all know that. I shouldn't have to convince anybody that that's a good thing. More demos and more trials is upstream of more customers, which is fine and good. That's number one, which is what most of us are working on most of the time. The second is being able to get a higher quality of customer. And by that, I mean somebody who spends more. So most marketers are actually unfamiliar with what their average contract values are for the B2B businesses that they work in or that they support. We often ask this question to incoming clients and say, what is your average annual contract value? And the most common answer we get is, it depends. Well, it's a math problem, right? It's an average contract value. It's not an it depends answer. We're not talking about a normal distribution, but it's an average contract value. And let's say it's about, $25,000 for the types of clients that we work with, the very low end, super conservative, mid-market or enterprise SaaS, selling a 25 to 50K ACV solution. Maybe not dissimilar to where Dream Data kind of plays in basically as well. So, and I know you've sold a lot, Laura, right? Like, so you can think about the customers who bought at 25K versus at 30K, right? That's a roughly, it's more than a 10% increase, a 20% increase over there. But imagine just a 10% increase. So rather than somebody buying at 25K, they're buying a $27,500 annual deal, right? So that's the second 10%. The third is, could we get them for 10% cheaper than we are getting them today? Is there not at least 10% waste that we have across all of the things we're doing in terms of the ads we're running, the costs we're paying, the locations we're bidding in, the roles and titles who are seeing our ads across LinkedIn and Google and Bing and Capterra, or in our content? Could we not get a little bit more juice for the squeeze? Just 10% more juice for the squeeze, where each prospect, each demo, or each trial was effectively 10% lower from a cost of acquisition standpoint. Which is, again, the second biggest thing that I think marketers are manic about is, number one, we need more pipeline. Number two, we need it for a lower cost per lead or cost per acquisition, right? True or true in terms of the conversations that end up happening. So that's what the 3x10 method really is. 3 levers: get more demos, get them for 10% lower cost per demo, and work so that your annual contract value, the average essentially for that cohort you're working on, goes up by 10%. Nothing bombastic, not 2x. We're not trying to go from SMB to enterprise as motion, for example. We all have these. So the data points are in the same way that you might have a 25, 27 and a half, 30, 50K ACV prospect in your pipeline right now. The idea is just moving the bar up ever so slightly so that the low water line becomes your mid water line. We're not talking about trying to go for the outliers, essentially. Does that make sense on some level?
Absolutely. It absolutely does. And it's so much easier to not just comprehend, but also to put it into the growth trajectory. It does not seem too heavy, too much. And speaking about more, because we're still in the same era of more, let's get more for less. Where do people make the biggest mistakes when they go for more and trying to get more with less? Yep.
So let's talk
All
about the
right.
mistakes, basically. We were talking about what are some of the challenges or mistakes that marketers make when they're challenged with doing more with less, right? That's where we were at. The first one is simply agreeing to doing more with less. I think that's an element of sandbagging the plan or being set up to fail. But it's setting the wrong strategy. And the wrong strategy will often go towards trying to cut your way to growth. And the reality is, it's very difficult to do that, right? If you think about most things in life, whether in business or otherwise, you can't cut your way to growth. Good CFOs primarily know this, but unfortunately, marketing and sales are one of the first places for cuts to happen in a tough economy. And so it's not about asking for resources, which is one of the things that marketers do. They often say, I need more people on my team. I need agency support. I need tools. It's about being resourceful more than anything else. And so that's a mindset shift that we need to don in terms of saying, okay, this is the reality. I would love for it to be different. I would love for it to be like 2021, but it's not 2021. And so what do we do differently at this point in time? Well, the first one is, go for the small swings, the small hinges that can swing the large doors. That's a huge portion of doing this right. The second is choose the right levers specifically, and then make sure that you're winning pipeline the easy way rather than the hard way. One of the challenges in hard times or in tough times is that the sort of the time horizon that you're afforded by the people that you report into, your boss's boss or boss's boss, essentially, it compresses. And so what used to be okay in boom times that it can take 6 months to 9 months is now like, show me progress in the next 2 to 6 weeks, essentially, right? And so what we have to do is choose the right opportunity vehicle over there as well to build pipeline. And often, if you have a long sales cycle, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, for example, whatever you do, even if you're a magician at creating pipeline today, right, it wouldn't close for the sales cycle. It would close 6 months to 9 months to 12 months down the line. So you would essentially do all the right things, but still get killed in the water because unfortunately it won't come to fruition. And so it's one of these things where can that strategy continue working sustainably to see it come to the end? Or can you approach it a completely different way? And so those are some of the things we see marketers typically, they accept a plan that's kind of set up to fail. They focus on the wrong strategies and the wrong levers, essentially. And the third is the one that I just basically described. And so the 3x10 method is basically, I would say it's for smart underachievers or smart overachievers. If you think about that like meme, the midwit meme, I don't know if you know. Yeah, so we don't want the middle, the very right hand side of the outliers or the one on the left hand side. Both of them essentially are just like, let's just get more pipeline, let's just win, right? And so that's essentially what we're focused on basically over here with that.
And if we were thinking about more tactical, small
Yeah.
improvements for those 10%, let's
Yes.
walk those through because that's
Yeah.
what people are there. Like, give us the beef. What can we do, Dev, in order to get the 10%?
Let's operationalize this. So let's just focus the first one, which is where most of you are spending most of your time, which is how do I get more demos? The popular tactic you might be thinking about is how do I get more traffic? And so usually how do I get more traffic is upstream of I need to go ask for more budget, I need to deploy more budget, I need to growth hack, for example, right? So I can get ranked in ChatGPT or Perplexity with spamming Reddit or whatever is the tactic du jour basically for today. That can work, but it's going to be a coin toss, right? And this is where the random acts of marketing, essentially, the Hail Marys, essentially come from. So rather than improving your traffic, you can get 10% more demos simply by improving your conversion rates from stage to stage. At the very top, it's your click through rate. And so, when was the last time you went back and looked at your click through rates from your ads or from your organic search results and started improving them? So, let's make that super operational. And the answer is I can't remember when I last did that. The thing to do right now is go back into any platform that you're using. Let's say we're using this on the ad side because it's easier to be able to get feedback very quickly. Go into a demand capture platform like Google Ads, pull all the search queries, for example, that have driven demos specifically or driven a trial, and then look at the ads that drove those particular queries. And you're going to get a distribution again of ads, right? Some of those ads, you're going to get the middle point, essentially, the median click through rate of those ads. Everything to the left of that, which is going to be all the underperforming ads, they deserve to get rewritten. If you rewrite those ads, what ends up happening is that median performance will go up. And so all we're doing is using the power of words and a little bit of data sleuthing to be able to improve the click-through rate of these ads. The same thing on the organic side. Maybe you put in a title tag and a meta description on your content years ago was the last time you looked at it, maybe, right? Go back into Google Search Console and start pulling up the best performing content that has driven from those pages conversions, because you don't know what keywords went on organic. Google took away that ability a long time ago. But you can improve the click through rate simply by rewriting the title and the meta description to be a better fit for what it looks like today. Pro ninja tip would be go look for the keywords that you actually intend on ranking for that particular piece of content, blog post or static page, feature page, for example. Look at what all the competition basically is doing. If we're at the tail end of 2025 as we're recording this, many of those companies are thinking about 2026 at this point in time. They may have gone and actually updated their title tags to talk about the best XYZ tools in 2026 as we're getting to the end of the year, right? Do that. Like look at the competitive landscape and just figure out how do I make my virtual real estate stand out in a way that is differentiated from the pack of other results that it'll be compared to. And so this is how we operationalize strategy. Strategy is knowing what to do, which is I'm choosing between do I get more traffic, which is hard, Or do I just improve the traffic that I already have, right? And improve in this case, the conversion is the click-through rate is essentially from impressions or visibility to click-throughs, essentially. That's at the very top end. You can now abstract that down further and you can say, well, how do I get more demos? I can improve the conversion rate of my demo or trial page. That's a very simple way of getting more demos because at the very tail end, look, no one's requesting a demo off your site without having looked at a couple of key pages. If they have not looked at your feature pages, if they have not looked at your pricing page, if they have not looked at some other types of pages like your integrations, for example, these are just part of the buying decisions before somebody chooses to reach out and talk to a human and wants to see the platform basically in action, right? So what you could say is if there's only one path to getting into talking to a human on the sales side, and that is the demo page. The demo page is either working for you or against you. And if you're getting a low conversion rate on the demo page, meaning for every 100 people who are landing on that demo page, having already visited preceding pages like features, pricing, integrations, for example, then the demo page is not working for you. It's a choke point at that point in time. So the logical thing to do is not to get more traffic. It is to improve the conversion rate of that particular demo page. And so we can go for hours on how tactical we can get around this, but common mistakes we see on a page like that,
Uh-huh.
not mentioning what what you're going to get on the demo, how long it's for, can you control whether you can book the time, or if you can't, when will someone get back to you specifically? No risk reversal or social proof and testimonials on the demo page about people who have become customers actually talking about how useful the demo itself is, not how useful the product is, because the point of every step is to sell the next step, essentially, right? But these are the things that are missing usually on these pages where, having, the page with a lot of the content buried below the fold where people won't scroll. A demo page is a decision-making page, right? So people don't actually need to scroll. They have all the information they need either to move forward or to bounce, essentially. So burying all that at the very bottom of the page is not very useful. Put it up way at the top, redesign the page, ask for less fields in the form, for example, or use a progressive form. These are all ultimately tactics, but the actual strategic outcome we want is if we don't fix this page, we're going to continue losing conversions and demos. If we want 10% more demos, pick any one of these things I've just mentioned, and you'll probably hit the nail on the head. If you compound them together, you'll probably get way more than 10% demos, which is what we see with most of the case studies from clients we work with within the first 12 weeks of us working together, because it's one of the first things we actually hit. So we're majoring on the majors, not on the minors. We're not trying to sell this whole like huge website redesign or huge ad campaign overhaul. It's the little things done well that matter.
That is so exciting because it's usually what you actually oversee. And you nail one thing so right, which is so much overseen. You have to sell every single step. You're not
Mhm.
selling the solution just on the website that people go in,
Yeah.
click book a demo, and now they're buying your solution. No, you have to sell them to book the demo with you. I've never thought about this way. Like advertise that this is how great the demo was that other people have
Right.
gotten. Yeah.
Even if they don't buy, because what will end up, and the reason for that, because you and I both work on some level in sales as well and connecting with prospects to demonstrate why us, why now, and why do anything at all, is about 50% of the time in B2B, the decision is no decision, right? They choose to sit on their hands and do nothing. And so if you take every little micro interaction to even educate and motivate the category you're selling specifically, you stay on top of mind, even if you don't buy. I'll give you an example of a real story. We lost a deal about 2 months ago, and it was a competitive bid where 5 different agencies came in. We were the highest priced partner in that particular bid. And so the CFO killed the deal with us and went with the second highest, basically. And the person that we were working with, the VP of Demand Gen, were like, "We loved you guys. We will probably be back, but I have to kind of appease my CFO for the next 6 months." And we said, no problem at all. We're here for you. We hope you win. I'm sure you chose well. Surprisingly, they're owned by a private equity company, and they referred another deal into a public company that this particular P person is on the board of. And so we're about to now win a new deal that is 2 times the size of that old deal, which you just never know how karma is going to basically come back to you, right? And so the interesting thing about the demo kind of testimonial is you can leave an impact on a person even if they don't buy, because they remember how useful you are, how valuable you are. And you just never know from a timing perspective if they're going to come back. That's why we call these intentional interactions, which is every little thing, including like on that particular page, what happens on the thank you page, what happens in the follow-up emails after that, the show up emails, everything kind of matters at the end of the day, because it's a closing from click to close one is a team sport, and every interaction is either an opportunity to build more trust or to lose it because you just haven't done anything and you're doing it by default rather than design.
I love this. And if we move on to the second step, getting 10% more
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
product itself,
Yes.
rationalize that.
Great. This topic I can nerd out about because I love this. This is the like being able to maintain a price premium is a function of how much value you're generating. That's my fundamental belief over there. And the common mistake that we see most B2B marketers making is they say, we need to move up market. And to do that, we need to change our targeting. And so what they end up doing is they buy lists essentially of other companies who have more employees broadly is one of the kind of core things. And they say because they have more companies, they probably have a higher willingness to pay. This will help us move up market from wherever we are to mid to kind of enterprise, essentially. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. It's true on the nose. The issue with it is as you move from your current positioning to a new positioning, you're fundamentally a stranger in a new market. They don't know who you are. It's going to take you time to build up brand impressions. You guys have great data on this. It takes a year to go from first impression to close one revenue, right? And so that marketer may not even be there. If you're watching this right now and you're thinking about changing your targeting, you could literally be changing roles by the time that plays out, right? Whether that's, again, of your own will or the decision is made for you at some point in time. So improving targeting it sounds like a great strategy, and it does if you have a long enough time horizon. But our perspective on it is improving messaging is actually an easier fix than improving targeting. So if you keep your targeting, and most of the time targeting is relatively straightforward in the sense of you want to, let's say you have a list of account-based targets that you want to go after. Within those particular targets, if you improve the message of what those people see, then you're going to get a higher quality of prospect with a higher willingness to pay. So this is the difference between, are you selling the flight, the features, or are you selling the vacation, right? And people will value the vacation. They can imagine sort of going to Maui, sitting on the beach, having a pina colada, if that's your thing, versus, taking the 14-hour flight over, crying kids, all of that, right? Which just seems like a lot of sacrifice and effort specifically. When I'm talking about improving messaging in B2B, we don't buy vacations or a flight to Maui. That works in B2C. The B2B version of that is speaking to pain points specifically. So what is an observable pain point? If you can literally insert yourself into the boardroom or the Teams meeting or the Zoom meeting that your ideal customer is basically happening, what just broke in their business right about the time where they start doing research to find a better solution. And that's what we call an observable pain point, right? So for example, there are two types of SaaS buyers we think about. There's switchers and upgraders. Switchers are moving from a solution that is a modern SaaS solution to something better. So they're used to buying your category essentially, but something's broken about the way they're doing it today. And upgraders are people who are jerry-rigging solutions to try and figure it out. So for Dream Data, let's say, right? The upgrader solution would be somebody who's using Google Analytics, they're using HubSpot, and they're using Salesforce, three different tools that don't really talk to each other very well. They have no idea how their ads platforms connect the dots, essentially. They move to something like Dream Data because they need to see one unified view of how buying committees buy. And fundamentally, they need to understand what their marketing cycle is, not what their sales cycle basically is. So that's what they want to do. But what breaks is a board meeting where HubSpot is saying a different number than Salesforce. The numbers don't basically agree and so on. So when we talk about this, improving the messaging, it's really two things. Instead of talking about features, talk about the pain points that the customer is facing. And if you want to get a little bit more ninja with this, don't just sell to the daily user of the product because often they won't have the budget to make the buying decision. Go one level above, but not too high. So you're not going to the C level essentially because they won't show up typically to demos. But at a mid-level managerial director VP level is where we see the messy middle of most demos essentially coming in. This is true for you if in your business, the person who books the demo is very different. If there are like 3 or 4 rungs basically removed from the person who signs the actual SOW, then you're in a buying committee type situation, essentially. So improving messaging can help speak to the types of outcomes that the people who have budget and authority essentially need and timing they care about, which is fundamentally different than daily users. Daily users just they want speed, they want a better quality of life at work, they want it to be automated, they want it to be error-free, for example, but they don't have to face the impact of having those errors and slowness, for example. Managers and VPs and C-level people do. And so moving your messaging up in terms of observable pain points ever so slightly is a simple way of getting a higher quality of prospects. So the net is don't just use targeting, focus on the messaging, because if the messaging is super product feature heavy, then you're burying the outcome of buying the product rather than selling the features. And the reason for that is in most competitive categories, you get feature parity. Most platforms do what most other platforms do. So it actually is super difficult for buyers to understand what they should be buying and how it's differentiated.
Yeah, it reminds me of a conversation we had yesterday about for a sales leader, it's pretty easy to do small adjustments when they come in as a new sales leader. And then you're able to get more meetings, better conversions. We're changing some of the standard ways that we're selling in the company. And you can see the result instantly, like a month, 2, 3, and you're a good sales leader. For marketers, this is such a big challenge because if you do that type of a huge change in strategy, positioning, and website changes, you might not even be there to see the results. So, what you're talking about, you're actually putting the marketer into that type of a strategic role that they're able to do the small changes that can be felt within a couple of months.
That's exactly it. And operationalize, that means making the smallest possible copy tweaks, a copy tweak in your ad, on the landing page, on your home page, on the feature page, primarily trying to nail the way that your customers already speak. The way we do this, by the way, is we go straight to the actual sales calls that our customers are having. We look at their Gong or their Clary, for example. We've built some technology to be able to extract all the sentiment associated with it. And we call it a magic moment. A magic moment is basically where the prospect shares their love letter of why they're reaching out. So if you have a good sales process, in ours, we often ask like, why are you reaching out now? And why not 6 months from now or 6 months earlier this year? So what's making it a priority right now? And usually a calibrated question like that gets the prospect to admit what's going on in their organization. We can peel that some more and understand like what's the true reason and the impact of not solving the problem. But once you know basically what that is, times 100 conversations,
Yeah.
you're going to see some trends and patterns of like what are the 3 to 5 jobs to be done or the moments that cause pain within an organization to cause them to reach out and look for someone like you. Just use their words on your landing page. Like we don't think that copywriting should be clever. It is assembled like Lego, brick by brick by brick, basically. And the bricks are essentially the words that come out of your customers' mouths.
Fantastic. And now, if we go more into the operand, so if we go to
Yeah.
the third step to
Yeah.
saving the 10%, really. So
Yes.
what are the
Yes.
parts of there?
Okay, so let's use the most popular tactic first and why you shouldn't focus on that because everybody does. And the biggest thing we see in cost per demo, reducing CAC or payback or upstream of that cost per acquisition is usually an effort on decreasing wasted ad spend. And so the two levers that we often see is they're both penny wise and pound foolish, by the way. One is, can we cut back our ad spend and remove either pick your poison, let's reduce our branded spend, or let's reduce our performance oriented spend, depending on who we're talking to. The leader might think we're all about brand and brand is what sells. And on the performance side, it's all about performance and brand can't really be measured. We have, strong points of view on that. But aside from that, that's one is just like a lever of like, let's just spend less to be able to reduce that. Or you might find the direct response marketer or performance marketer saying, let's reduce wasted ad spend. So let's go in and basically look at all the content that isn't performing, all the dollars that aren't driving demos and reduce that. Now, there is some truth to that. Like, for example, when we audit campaigns, our average client is spending anywhere between $30,000 to $100,000 a month in paid ads when they first come to us, and then we help them scale up. We'll find 20 to 40% of that spend not driving any pipeline whatsoever. And so for the CFOs of those companies, it's music to their ears. It's almost like they've hired us as a tax advisor to optimize their taxes in perpetuity. And so that's a quick win, but it is not the thing that you can continue as the same thing you kind of mentioned with the sales leader example, that you can't juice it. Once it's already trim and you've cut out the fat, you can't do very much over here. So a more sustainable approach that we look at is, instead of improving your wasted ad spend, which is cutting out stuff you shouldn't have ever been doing anyways, said differently, that's a technical term, is improve your offer. Because the offers in the B2B SaaS industry are so plain Jane, unfortunately. We have just accepted these sort of best practices as gospel, where we think that starting a free trial or requesting a demo is the offer. It's not an offer. It's an entirely ignorable offer. It's clear, it's very clear what you want people to do, but it doesn't really give your prospects a reason to actually go forward and do it. And when we say improve the offer, I'll give you two simple ones that we've tested and has worked quite well. Instead of saying request a demo, use the call to action, see it in action, which is the difference between seller side language. If you're the seller of the platform, you want people to request a demo. So of course you call it request a demo. But what the buyer wants is, I don't want a demo. I don't want to be sold to. What I want to do is, I want to see how this platform works. I want to see it in action. And so that ever so slight psychological tweak, rather than a logical, like, we're not talking about blowing up your funnel or completely changing your visual identity or any of that, right? Putting video testimonials on your landing pages. We're not talking about something that's a heavy lift like that. We're talking about changing a button from request a demo to see it in action. So something super small like that, we've seen have very large A/B testing, benefits. And we're not talking green button versus blue button, right? We're talking about the words, and the right words in the right order do make a difference based off who's hearing them and perceiving them. So that's one, see it in action. If you want to take this to the next level, what we do is when we first bring a client on board, we will watch their best account execs deliver a demo. And what we notice is their best account execs will deliver a demo in a very different way than the average account exec. And so they'll do things that are kind of maverick style, like they won't follow the full playbook. They've just got this intuition to say, my customer only cares about these three things in I'm not going to do a product tour. I'm going to ask these questions in this order. Then I'm going to show them just that section of the platform. And I'm going to show them the cost of inaction if they don't have this. And I'm going to show them what's going to happen, if they use a platform in a certain time frame. So they got that part kind of figured out. We look at that and say, so it sounds like we did this actually for a data analytics platform. They did a dashboarding solution. They're a competitor to, without naming them. And so what they were doing in their demos with their best account execs is, the account exec would reach out to a prospect and say, could you bring me some sample data? Show me a dashboard that you are currently using today with Looker or whoever you're using it with. We will redesign that dashboard live using your data in our platform. And so we're like, this is magic, right? Like, the offer is not request a demo. The offer is build a real-time dashboard you can share with your team live by the end of this call. And so clearly, like, uptake and throughput, skyrocketed. Often we bury the lead of our magic. Basically, the things we do are buried in these one-to-one conversations that are locked away in some Firefly or Grain or Gong recording, basically. And what we do is we get the most watered down version of an offer on our website or on our landing pages and so on. So it's not just request a demo. Easy mode, call it, see it in action, write back and let me know how that went for you. Hard mode, but very, it pays off in a very sustainable way. Go actually watch what good people do to close at a higher rate. And you'll see that they do different things than your average AEs basically do. The trouble, I think, is marketers almost never do this type of stuff. They don't actually, once they lob off over a deal to sales, it's like, let's just go get more. And when we see very poor MQL to SQL rates, it's an age-old debate of sales saying the leads are no good and marketing saying you don't know how to close. But there's no actual curiosity to say, how are the customers who are closing and why are they closing at a higher rate? And what about the leads is not good? So not just this is the kind of Toyota principle of go and see, where the idea is, don't just take somebody's word for it, go straight to the recording and watch the game tape to understand what's going on over there. So in the early days, we would literally do this. We would go watch tape after tape and tape. Now with AI, we're able to, get a lot of these sentiments and the insights, essentially package them up, share them with clients and say, is this what's going on in your business? And they're like, this is great. Like, can we just take what's being said in a one-to-one environment and put it to your one-to-many environment to talk to strangers on your website and get them to see the same type of reaction that your best prospects are happening? And if we did that, would it be unreasonable not to see a 10% lift in the number of people who follow through? So it's like doing the work, but at the same time, really under promising and over delivering in terms of the outcome of the work. The 10% is easy to buy into. No one's going to, lose their shirt by saying 10%. And the results when you combine this all together is pretty large. It's an 89% increase when you take the three different levers and the 10% improvements compounded together.
And it's so much easier to unpack and get people working on those smaller improvements rather than the next big thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking about the collaboration between teams, you spoke about that this is both the marketing operations, sales operations stuff that is in play. We've got a question. Wouldn't this require somebody working across the teams? And how does that type of handoff work when we're trying to achieve those smaller results in a bigger scale up?
Yeah, great question from Prakriti over here. You do need someone who is good at growth ops. So you need somebody who can tie these different people and their incentives together. It's why we created this methodology called predictable growth. And the idea is it's the opposite of siloed growth. If you work in silos, it's like an orchestra, for example, where everybody's playing their instrument to their own beat and there is no conductor. So yes, you do need a conductor in place over here. That conductor could be a great VP. It could be a CMO. It could be a very strategic agency partner that basically comes in like ourselves. And there's a few other peers in the space that do good work. But you do need somebody because cats don't hurt themselves. Unfortunately, they march their own beat. They go their own way. And so you do need to be able to get everybody rowing in the same direction. Otherwise, a natural way of the world is entropy. People will do their own thing. They're 100% committed to their own habits, and habit change and behavior change is a difficult thing.
Love that. That's playing to the same drum as well. So talking about collaboration, how do you get the best results of marketing and sales working together for that
Yeah.
handoff to happen?
Great question. Okay, so we have this like bow tie model. If you can imagine a bow tie, on the left hand of the bow tie, you've got all the marketing work from attract, engage, and convert. And in the middle of the bow tie, like where the little button basically is, where you have the website and the marketing operations or marketing automation system. So if you really think about it, sales really starts to care once a demo lands effectively. They don't care about all the work that went into that demo essentially landing. So if you think about the most important handoff point, it is essentially this, and I'll give you a restaurant example. In a restaurant, if marketing is basically the chefs and cooks, the line cooks, right? We're making this amazing dish. We put the dish out onto the counter, and a waiter is now supposed to take it and move it, take it to the customer, right? So I like to call that sort of heart of house versus front of house, essentially, instead of back and front, but heart of house and front of house. If the waiter doesn't come at the right time, the dish goes cold. And this is the number one problem we have in B2B right now, where the handoff, the speed to lead for sales teams to be able to intercept, reach out, book a call, get call, show up is so low. Like the bar is incredibly low, even here in 2025, despite having meeting booking tools and things like that at the end of the day being kind of ubiquitous, right? That's the main part where marketing can come in. So Prakriti, here's what you can do. We have a campaign we put into HubSpot and Salesforce, and every week we send a snapshot report to the VPs of both marketing and sales that we work with. And often we're in service of the marketing organization, really not to the sales organization, but sales is like dotted line basically to the work we do. But we call it a no leads left behind report. And effectively, it's a report that says in the last 7 days, here are all the demos that came in that were ICP fits. So, you have a defined definition of who an ideal customer basically is. And it's like Acme Corp, Beta Corp, Gamma Corp came in last week from these channels, from paid social, organic, and no one has talked to them, right? And so they're both CC'd on there. So they see it and go, okay. And at an average value, we assign the pipeline value associated with it, which is the minimum, most conservative deal size, basically that company would accept. So now it's not just like 7 or 10 or 12 deals; it's 12 deals at a roughly, call it 15K ACV, right? And then abstracted down to the cost per or revenue per demo it might be $2,000-$3,000. So you have 12 times 3 at that point. You have $36,000 in pipeline just from last week that no one spoke to. So why are we spending money if no one's going to field these leads? And so it creates a very healthy conversation, and it's just about preempting it rather than reacting to it later. The main problem I often see is people ignored these problems for too long. And then what ends up happening is at the end of the quarter, the pacing isn't working very well. The targets are not being attained. People start getting really reactive. But at the very beginning of the quarter, if you say, look, we're going to try this quarter differently, we're going to put this report in. It's going to have an automated snapshot. You guys are both going to be CC'd on it. The teams are going to be CC'd on it. And if you want to get bold with it, you can actually put a leaderboard of reps, essentially. They don't necessarily need to see it, but the VP of sales can see on a leaderboard which of their reps are the fastest speed to lead in terms of booking the demo and showing up to the demo and progressing from stage to stage versus who's the bottom quartile of performer, essentially, because that can then now lead to the coaching conversations. But this connection point of that bow tie is usually the thing that's missing. It's the 80-20 of getting this right.
Got it. Got it. And you walked us through so many various tactics that can be changed. And it's fantastic because you can get any of those to push the boundaries just a little bit more. But
Mhm.
how do you help companies prioritize what they need to start on looking into to
Yeah.
start?
This is critically important, which is not knowing where to start is where the confusion comes from. And it's where this feeling of like we are doing a million things or all random acts of marketing. We're trying to see what spaghetti kind of sticks to the wall. These are literal phrases, by the way, that our VPs of marketing and CMOs say to us. So I'm using them again in this particular conversation to see if it resonates. You start by stopping the bleed. So you identify the reddest part of your entire funnel today. And so, for example, one of the new clients we're bringing on board has a 0.5% conversion rate, basically, from the demo page to close one. And we're going, what is going on here? You need 200 people at a high cost per click to enter into this demo page to actually fill it out so they can talk to you. So that is the reddest part of your funnel. We don't need to go fix your close one rate. And we look back at it and we see like what's benchmark, right? So if you're closing 20 to 33% of your deals, you don't have a sales efficiency problem. You just need more quality pipeline certainty. So more deals with the right pipeline kind of right criteria essentially for quality. And so we kind of color code the entire funnel as we first start coming in and say, this is a green light, that's a yellow light, this is a red light. And wherever there's a red light is basically the first place to fix. Often where that is it's fixing the three things I kind of mentioned. So very poor ads, very poor landing pages that no one has basically tested in a long time. So again, the critical factor there is improve the click-through rate so that more total audiences see what you're actually doing and get to your website. If they never get to your website, then they won't ever buy from you. That's the thesis there. The second is improve the messaging. So you're focusing on a higher quality of buyer. You're moving upstream in the roles and titles specifically and targeting their pain points. And the last one is improving the offer. And so that means going straight to the page that is a money page or the choke point page, like the demo, for example, or the start a trial page, and improving that. If you're doing product-led growth, by the way, and you have a free trial of some kind, the number one mistake we often see here is teams obsess about their activation and onboarding flows. Which is like when somebody uses the product, like what are the three things they need to do over the next 14 to 21 days for them to go from trial to paid. But they overlook one key area, which is when someone actually signs up for a product, are you making them context switch and go into their email to be able to find a verification code or to click a link to actually activate the account? And 50% of people never do that. That's the part that's mind-boggling. And so what's a simple fix we do over there in terms of improving the throughput? On the thank you page, we literally give them instructions with a GIF, like an actual like little video that says, if you have Gmail, and we can tell like based on do they have Google Workspace or Gmail or Outlook, for example, Microsoft domain, we show them their version of what their inbox would look like, and we give them a search string with a specific link that they can click, which they then opens up their Gmail, and it looks for the actual activation email in case it was in spam, and then it says click this button over here to activate. And so that for more old school SaaS, if it's the ones that now send you a code of some kind, we basically show them the same thing, which is go here, look for this, put the code in, and then you'll be on your way. And then we even give them messaging that you're 2 minutes away from setting up your first. Like we work with companies like Toggle, for example, or FreshBooks. You're 2 minutes away from sending your first invoice and getting paid. It just gives them that sort of callback to say, oh, okay, yeah, that's why I'm signing up for this product again. It's not to do work, it's to get paid. So those are the little areas that I think are overlooked, where it's like the pinch point is the thing to optimize. The reddest point in the funnel is the thing to optimize first.
I love this. And it seems so simple, but you have to find those golden nuggets of how you're going to do this. We've got a question from Life, and I like it because he's asking for inspiration. So if you were to
Yeah.
define a perfect demo, book a demo page, or maybe you have an example.
Yes, we have examples on our Learn section of our site. I'll see if I can drop that into a link over here. I have a very specific playbook on how we think about this as well. Okay, so that's one example of good demo pages and what they do well. Yeah, I mean, if you just go on to poweredbysearch.com, you'll see a section for Learn, and then we basically aggregate some of the best examples in the wild associated with this on the web. Let's address Life's second question though, with the one about like what's better, book time yourself or leave info. Generally speaking, your buyers will have so much more information about what you do, and they know more about the product, frankly, before they ever reach out than not. And so, generally speaking, people are pretty pressed for time. Their calendars are packed. The only time, if you're a busy person, the only time your calendar is free is 3 weeks from now. And even still you'll have some things on there essentially. So this idea that you'll hear back and then play calendar tag is deeply frustrating for most directors and VPs or managers essentially. If you're an individual contributor, maybe the situation's a bit different depending on who you end up selling to. So we're big fans of being able to give the quote unquote agency the ability for you to be able to control your own time. And that's why we're fans of, doesn't matter what you use, HubSpot meetings, Calendly, Chili Piper, we're technology agnostic, default if you're doing routing or whatever. The technology itself doesn't matter. What does matter is setting the expectation of what will happen. So for example, one of the mistakes we see, even if you have calendar booking tools, is demo pages that do not set the expectation that when you fill this form, on the other side of this form, you will be able to pick a time that suits your availability. And let's say you sell globally, it might actually be helpful to add a little line of text that's saying multiple time zones are available, including yours. That's an example of how you set and pace expectations just using the power of words. And it's got nothing to do with form routing. It's got nothing to do with the technology basically that you're using. It's got everything to do with expectations management.
Fantastic. And Life, feel free to reach out to Dev after this as well for the link. I will add it to the LinkedIn Live itself too, as soon as we're off live. And that's for everybody as well. Connect with Dev to have this conversation. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you about your predictions for next year. Now you're saying
Oh, yeah.
everybody's doing like the list for 2026. What's
Yes.
the predictions for next year?
Okay. Oh, juicy. Okay, so first one, adoption of the AI browser. So my go-to browser right now is Comet from Perplexity. ChatGPT just launched their Atlas browser. My hot prediction is actually that we won't see a departure from Chrome. We will see the new version of Chrome with AI capabilities and Gemini basically built into it. And Google will make that basically near free, essentially. So if you're looking at any of these other models that are saying, pay me $200 per month to be able to use my all the things kind of features, like Perplexity, for example, whatever their max feature is now, you pay me $200 per month and I can hook into your Gmail and write your email responses and do everything for you. Google will basically be late to the game, but still win it essentially. And so I wouldn't, count them out of the race at this point in time. But the difference is no one in 2026 will use a traditional browser. They will use an AI-enabled browser that's natively AI-enabled. That's one. Number two is we'll continue seeing a big rise in answer engine optimization and generative engine optimization. Today, that landscape is mostly people who are, frankly, many of them have never even done traditional SEO before. So there's a bunch of shysters in there right now. But the folks who are worth their salt, who have been good at doing content and SEO over the last 10 plus years, are adapting. We have clients like SentinelOne, for example, who've spoken about our work in answer engine optimization and generative engine optimization. That will improve. The third is that content marketers will stop creating informational content. So any content that is something that might be in an AI overview, like what is X, what is attribution, what is multi-model funneling, or whatever, MMM, all of that will go away because those answers will be provided by an LLM. So content marketers will not focus on that anymore. Content marketers will focus on the type of content that only they can produce and no one else can. So what that means, tools, research studies, stats, for example, think about this as content will become about what data can you own a moat around so that you become the source to both Google and to an LLM and to your buyers largely. You guys at Dream Data are nailing this, by the way, right? In terms of the way you're approaching the stats in the market to become a citable source, essentially. HubSpot has done a good job of this in the past, but more recently, they just have so much top of funnel, informational content that's why they got killed from an SEO perspective. Those are three broad predictions. I expect that ChatGPT will launch an ads product in 2026, basically, as well, and that'll be a whole new playing field from over there. Number 5 is that I think AI video production will finally get good. Like even today, if you think about it, the leaders in this space are largely they're in e-commerce, building, thousands of meta ads of, people picking up whatever, like this bottle and saying, this bottle is the best thing since sliced bread, right? It has ABC features. The lip syncing is still a bit weird on those. I don't know if you feel the same way, Laura. Like I don't feel comfortable creating an AI video of any content that we produce today because it's a bit off. It's still a little uncanny valley in terms of the way that the eyes and the face and things. I think that'll largely go away. So we'll have the same moment we had in 2023. If anybody remembers a video of like Will Smith eating noodles from I can't remember what it was, what model created that. The new version of that is actually quite good. There's a 2 years apart kind of comparison of that. I think in 2026, AI video is going to be big. So a lot of the explainer videos, the customer testimonial videos, things like that, text-based content will become more believable from an AI perspective as the models get better and better over there.
Fantastic.
That's a hot 5.
Devin, thank you so much for the conversation. Everybody in the audience, thank you so much for questions and comments. Do go connect with Dev. I am not exaggerating when I'm saying that this was the most hands-on session I've ever hosted within Dream Data's history of lives. So whoever is listening or re-listening, there are so many golden nuggets that you can go pick up and do them either yourself or get guidance from Dev and Powered by Search. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks, Laura, for having me.
Thank you.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.